Pokemon. Goddamn Pokemon. Let me tell you how I came to hate this franchise. It all started out fine back in 2001 when I was but a measly little child. I borrowed Pokemon Red from my cousin and I had the time of my life. Catching Pokemon, training them, and using them in PETA-unfriendly battles just was a cool concept that was unheard of at the time. You had 151 different Pokemons with great designs and different attacks to ensure that every player could play the game the way they wanted it to. It sported a typical JRPG-like round-based fighting system, while at the same time making it simpler so that even small little children like me could enjoy. Getting all the 8 badges and then fighting the Elite Four just felt grand and epic, like you were embarking onto an adventure. And then Pokemon Gold and Silver hit the market with one of the biggest plot twists of my childhood. You could play the entire map of Kanto, which is the map of the first generation, right after you finish Johto, which is the map of the second. I was like, holy shit, it's like there's 2 games in one, this is fucking amazing. You had 16 badges, double the amount of Pokemon, and you could see how your actions in the first game changed the Kanto region, and in the end you could even fight the character from the first game that you got to bond with, and defeating him was one of the best feelings ever. Like you'd just overcome your own limitations and you've grown as a person. And then, some years later, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire was announced. How could they make it better than Gold and Silver? I thought to myself, and even though back in the day I quite enjoyed those 3rd gen games, nowadays I just have to say, they really couldn't. I have stayed a fan of the games up until the 4th generation. Whenever people hated on Diamond and Pearl because their monster design sucks, or because it's just not Pokemon anymore, I always defended the game with all I could, but then Black and White came out, and for some reason I just didn't like it anymore. I still played it, and I still played the games after that, but my memory of Black and White is foggy and I barely remember anything about it. And that was the point where I really started hating this franchise. And here's why. Pokemon is the Call of Duty of Nintendo games, just with the exceptions that you can play a black transgender woman in World War II in Pokemon, and that it is fine to trash talk Call of Duty like there's no tomorrow, but it's a sin to talk shit about Pokemon for some reason. But every year or two, a new Pokemon game hits the market, and every year or two it is the exact same game as before, but with some artificial or cosmetic changes, leading their loyal fanboys and girls and everything in between to believe that this time it's all different, but it never really is. If you compare the newest games from the franchise to the oldest, almost every single flaw that the old games had have just been copied over. So let's just start with the biggest flaw in my opinion, the hard overworld limitations. People have been hating on the HMs for a long time. Now, if you're new to Pokemon, let me explain. HMs were Pokemon attacks that you could teach them to get rid of certain obstacles in the overworld. There's a bush in the way, you can't just walk through or around it. Nope, you need a Pokemon with a very specific attack to smoosh it away. See this pool of water that you can't traverse because you're a little fuck who doesn't know how to swim like all the other people in the water who clearly don't use Pokemon for that? Well, guess what? You just need a frickin' Pokemon with a very specific attack to do that. And the worst thing of all is that those attacks oftentimes were less powerful in combat than the attacks your Pokemon could learn by just leveling up, leading people to dislike HMs even more. But fear not, oh Pokemon fans. We, Pokemon Company, are already working on a solution. There will no longer be HMs in Sun and Moon. Instead, now you have special Pokemon that aren't part of your team to work around these hard limitations. And while that was a step in the right direction, what they didn't see though is that that only got rid of one of the smaller problems that came with HMs, and the hard limitations were still existent. Now you might say, but Jana, these limitations are really not that big a deal. I mean, you still get to go to those places at some point, right? And you might be right there, but my problem is not that it limits where you can go. My problem is how it tries to achieve these limitations. And to explain to you how limitations should work in a game like this, I'll be presenting to you soft limitations. The huge difference between hard and soft limitations is how it feels to the player. Let's take The Witcher 3 for example. In that game, the entire world is technically traversable from the get-go. You could open up your map, point your finger to one specific point, and the probability of you actually getting there was far from low. But then, when you actually try, you might encounter enemies that level-wise are far higher than the player, giving the player an actual challenge if they wanted to go there, punishing them in form of hard fights, but at the same time offering a slight chance of a reward, in form of the great feeling of just having fought a very difficult enemy and winning over it, and in return getting to explore the new area you just found. The only real limitation didn't really lie within the game, but rather within the player. If you were skilled enough, those enemies wouldn't hold you back, and even if you weren't, you could just try to run past them and away. Or you'd just pussy out, go back to the parts of the world where you'd find enemies that wouldn't kill you in one hit. But never has there been a bush standing in your way that you just need the right HM for. Now, even this design choice has its flaws. If you go to an area with lower leveled enemies, for example, you might just get bored by the combat. But that could be changed easily by making enemies level scale to the player's level. Only scale it up though. Scaling down would get rid of the soft limitations and make the entire thing obsolete. Scaling, however, comes with some slight problems too, as players would not feel the need anymore to level their lower Pokemon, and instead just catch the same Pokemon on a higher level at some point. So maybe instead of scaling other Pokemon up to your highest level Pokemon, it would scale to your team's average level and also the level cap, which is the point at which your Pokemon don't obey anymore if you've never played the game. That is earned through badges, or you only scale up to a small degree so that earlier areas still have slightly lower enemies, to showcase how much the player's team has grown already. But in the end, it really doesn't matter how they do it, as long as it does not infringe the player's freedom. And if Pokemon would take this kind of limitation and let you explore the entire world from the get-go without putting a drunk guy in your way that you totally can't just walk around, one of the biggest problems that Pokemon has would just be gone. Just picture how awesome it would be to have more freedom in these games, being able to do the gyms in the sequence that you'd want them to, and instead of the badges increasing your Pokemon's level cap in the locked order, like now, you'd gain 10 more levels or so on the cap with every badge you collect. The difficulty wouldn't be a problem either because of the upscaling of their levels. Or going to special hidden places that are actually able to be hidden thanks to the open world, where you'd find different Pokemon, and finding out where which Pokemon lives would be way more of an adventure than it is now. Plus, you can make legendaries actually fun to catch. In newer Pokemon games, they're being thrown at you like beads and candy at Mardi Gras. But making the places where you can encounter them more hidden not only makes catching them feel more rewarding, but the journey to that place will be more fun too. And it would actually be a journey. Now, you're still going from route to route, and on every route there's the same 5 Pokemon, and on the next route there's a new pair of 5 Pokemon. There just is no mystery and barely any motivation for you to actually explore. No, you're being handheld by the level design, and as soon as the world actually opens up, you've already been everywhere and know everything about these linear-ass places, leaving you with almost no reason to go back except for smaller, optional, and oftentimes unnecessary items and features. And that, dear friends, has been a part of the main Pokemon series for a long time, but with recent events when it comes to Nintendo games, my hope is actually higher than ever that Pokemon might change. Sure, we're getting Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and they're basically Sun and Moon mixed with Pokemon Go, and I bet your asses that all of my critique points won't have changed in that game. But a new generation has already been announced, and with Mario and Zelda going into these very different directions now, I really hope Pokemon will get the Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey treatment too. Another huge problem I have with Pokemon is the amount of Pokemon existing within the universe so far. I would much rather see a game in which all of the already existing Pokemon are catchable or at least fightable than to have a new 150 Pokemon with each game, constantly dropping in quality game by game, because there's only this many Pokemon you can make before you either copy older Pokemon and reskin them, which has already happened a lot, or your ideas for Pokemon become ridiculous. like Ice Cream-mon, or Not Really Pikachu-mon. But accomplishing that has become a near impossible task because of the sheer amount of Pokemon we already have. How the heck is anyone ever gonna put all 800 of them in a single game without making it either seem forced or sacrificing other gameplay elements? It is easier to just use a handful of the old Pokemon and make another 150 for the next game, but I would really appreciate it if they just would take their time, maybe not spew out 10 Pokemon spin-offs a year, and fully concentrate on a bigger project that could make that happen. One thing that is just very minor that I'd like to see would be to finally have seamless encounters instead of the "let's transition into the battle screen" spiel they're doing right now. Keep that combat system because it's really awesome, but these weird transitions just don't feel right anymore. I mean, they have the technical capabilities to just make trainers fight in the actual overworld, and it would make fighting a slight bit less tedious. Having to wait for those 2-second before the actual fight begins might not seem like much, but if you add up all the fights of the game, you have quite a lot of time spent on basically nothing. Apart from that, those battle screens just kinda rip me out of the immersion. In one moment you're in this place and suddenly you're in generic could be any place battle screen that does only change when you go from one major location to another. On top of that, making the fights overworld only would be able to put a stop to those damned random encounters everyone loves. Yay for no more throwing out monies for repels. Anyways, Pokemon needs to evolve. Get it? Get it? It's a Pokemon related joke, you guys. No? Okay. Pokemon evolve. That's why. Oh, you get it? Nah, fuck. Anyways, Pokemon really does need to evolve. They've been selling us basically the same game for years now, and people have just been buying into it. And I bet that just like with Call of Duty, people will get pissed off at some point and slowly leave the franchise be. And while I already am at that point in my career as fangirl, I'd hate for one of my favorite childhood franchises to go down like that. And if they actually change up the formula for the next game, I will consider joining back in again. But here's the thing. Expect the worst, hope for the best. And hoping is about all we can do now. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, tell me why in the comments. If you're nice about it, heck, I might even answer. Also, a special thanks to my buddy Simpire for proofreading the script. Have a nice day!